studio today with Matt, Tommy, and Patty Ann Hale. We're glad you're with us, talking about cultivating some great conversations today for cultivating a successful creative life. Hey, we're here. Woohoo!
Yay.
Glad for a great conversation today.
It's not raining, but it's trying to.
I know, it's like kind of spitting out there, we say. Do y'all say that too in Virginia? But
Yeah, we say spitting, I think. There's a lot of spitting going on in the mountains.
That's right, exactly. Patty and I have been talking about how funny it is that I'm from South Georgia and she's from Southwest Virginia, and how a lot of the things that we say, you know, like saying juice for electricity and all these kind of different things, we're like, I didn't know you said anybody else said that but us, you know. I don't know what that's about, but it's always funny when you find those kind of things. So, well, cool. Did you have a good weekend?
I did have a good weekend. My friend Terry came
Yeah.
down to spend some time with me from Virginia, and so that's been very good to
That's
have her with
awesome.
us. Awesome time at church yesterday.
It
good.
was. It was good. It was like one of those services like, hey, I don't want to leave. But
Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, good stuff. Well, we're real excited that you're here with us today, too, wherever you are around the country, around the world. It's always neat to see on Facebook who's listening and who's
Yeah.
watching the Ustream and that sort of thing. But we've been talking a lot about the last time we were together, we talked about the whole creative process of being inspired and how we kind of get to the creative process. And today we're going to be really taking apart some of the nuts and bolts, I hope, about what it means to really be in the creative process and becoming a master at what we do. You know, it was interesting. I remember when I first moved to Asheville several years ago, good friend of mine, Charlie Donaldson, who's a master glass artist and has stuff all over the world and just does painting and glass, and just he's one of those guys, you know, if you can think of it, he can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, you know, you come up here and you think, oh, I'm great at what I do and all this kind of thing. And he was like, yeah, you know, common wisdom is that you have to be doing what you're doing for 10,000 hours before you become a master at what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I suck. This is not good. You know, I don't know.
I'm glad I started when I was like 6.
I know, exactly. Well, somebody said it's like if 3 hours a day, you know, every day for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're working at it more, I think you can, you know, and some people never get to that. Some people obviously, you know, I think you could probably get to mastery before 10,000 hours. It's not like
Yeah.
the button clicks on and, ding, you know, there's always the X factor there as well, but and the God factor. But it's interesting that that's what we'll be talking about today, because it's something that I think as artists, we're always kind of pushing to the next level, always pushing to the next thing to see if we can increase our skill, increase our ability to flow in our medium, and really fulfill the things that we feel like God's got for us creatively.
Right, right. You know, along those lines of what we talked about last time was about that place of inspiration, and I think, you know, that's where it always starts with any work of art, is that we have that place of inspiration. And I was reading on the Guggenheim website just before I came down to the station that, you know, Kandinsky had went back to Munich, and it was in 1912. He had been backwards and forth to Munich, and that was his home place, you know. And so he had visited, and for 5 months he was trying to figure out how to say what he had in his mind because of that visit.
Right.
And so for 5 months he did study after study after study after study. And, you know, Kandinsky was all about expressionism.
Sure.
He was all about, like, just throw
Let
it
it
on the
flow,
canvas,
right.
woo, let it go. But he did study after study in pen and ink, drawing, pencil, oil, watercolor, and he did 16 very serious studies till he finally came to this one expression that was it, and it was the painting called Painting with White Border.
Wow.
And he talked about how you could find the silence and the place of pregnancy in the white. And there was something about, you know, Kandinsky's work is just full of every color.
Right.
And so there was something about the white border that just made everything
Sure.
work. But it took study after study in
Right.
several different medium for him to get to that point.
And so many times we just don't take the time to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, that's what I see in myself. It's just that rush to get the finished product sometimes, when in reality it's fun and it's freeing, but sometimes it's difficult for an artist to really take the time to kind of get out of production mode, to get out of this, I got to get to the finished product, especially when you're a full-time artist doing shows, doing gallery work. You have a new order comes in, and or people want to see new stuff, and you just have to take the time, just like you have to take the time to put in the work. I think you have to take the time also to step back and say, no, what is is it that I'm really doing,
Yeah.
and really get direction. Because otherwise, it's like anybody. I said to somebody, I guess it was, I don't know, last fall, I was with a pretty famous artist that I know, and was talking about the fact that I think we should always be, moving forward and evolving and that sort of thing in our work, and kind of pushing the envelope and looking for the next thing. And they were like, oh, I couldn't disagree more. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, if you find something that works, just write it. And I was like, well, I understand that from like be a successful artist standpoint, and I'm like the king of that. I mean, I like, want everybody to succeed and thrive and make money and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I can't imagine like thinking ever that I had landed on something. Because to me, I mean, I'm even to the point, like, if I make a piece in the studio, once I'm done with that piece, I really am ready to go home. Whether it took me 2 hours or 6 hours or whatever, I'm kind of done, because my creative energy is spent. And I just can't imagine ever coming to the point of thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing, and I'm just going to ride this now for the next 30 years and make money off of it. It's like, oh,
yeah. What if you had stopped? What if you had stopped at your traditional Appalachian rib baskets that you were doing? Gosh, that would be sad.
Right.
Because I'm watching you in the studio now, and you've been in a really a season of like exponential experimentation and growth, and it's like every new piece has something brand new with it.
And limited profanity. No, I'm just kidding. But, there's sometimes you just in the studio, you're just like, what am I doing? And there's that place of uncomfortability, right? I mean, just like, what am I doing? And at the same time, if we'll push through that, real results come. But
yeah. Well, I know that, a few months ago, I had noticed that about you, that you kept doing what you could do, what you knew how to do, as you were pressing into the new. You didn't stop what you were doing. So I think it's kind of both. You have to keep doing what you do well, but then also do the experimentation and the play and find the new things, and things just kind of morph, from glory to glory, right?
Well, that's right. That's right. I think that's the hope that, as creative people, we always can continue to lean on the Lord and say, okay, God, even though this feels really uncomfortable, I think as creative people, we get used to going with our gut, and the more that we can trust that inner instinct inside of ourselves, it's just like, people will come in the studio and look at a piece you're working on and be like, well, is it finished yet, or how long is that going to take you? And you're like, I really don't know, because you don't know. For me, I don't know until my gut says
it's done.
I know, yeah. Otherwise, I'll be in this really funky place of that's just not right, and I don't want anybody to look at this, but if I continue to listen to my gut and work with that, and that's the Holy Spirit that lives inside of us. That's how He's continued to work, in the midst of the place of chaos, in the midst of the place of uncomfortableness. He's always there saying, "Peace, be still." He's always there saying, "Let's kind of press through this to the next thing." And I think that's the beauty that happens. And when the whoosh happens, then the light of God happens, the resolve happens. It's kind of like in music. You got to have that resolve that, brings it all to a head. So.
Yeah, I know last time we talked about, the difference between genius or divine inspiration, and is that flowing through you, or is it just methodical? Is it just being trained and skilled? And, we talked about how it's both.
Right.
And so I think, what you're talking about is that wonder that happens, that awe that happens when you're creating something, and that can look so different for so many people. The creative process is so different for so many people, but there is that feeling that you're talking about, that whoosh, that amazing, like, satisfaction that nothing else can do in your life except being in that creative process. And so, but it also takes that discipline of methodically going about what you know how to do. And if you don't know how to do it, gaining the skill that you need, taking a class or talking to a friend or collaborating with someone that has that skill. I know I've been in this.
We do watching YouTube. It's like you can find just about anything you want.
Exactly.
On YouTube.
Well, let's see if that's on YouTube.
And if it's not yet, I make my own video and put it on there. So.
That's like where I am with these. I'm primarily a painter and do some mixed media, but I've been doing these art dolls, and you've got to laugh at me a little in the studio because I'm over there with power tools trying to do something that structurally will not work. And so I'm such a visual person, and I'm always working in 2D instead of 3D. That what looks right on paper, what looks right in the sketches will not happen in a
Right.
three-dimensional world.
Right.
And so it's like I'm in that place of just that learning curve. Like I am so slowed down to learn how to use the tools,
Right.
to learn how to change the Dremel heads. You
Yeah.
know, I don't even know how to do some of the things that I need to do.
She
and
came in the other day with this whole set of Dremel tools, and I mean, it's like 150 little, sets, and it's like a man's dream. I mean, it's like what you want on Christmas morning when you look at under the tree. This is what you want, men. And Patty's like, what are all these? And didn't know what the chuck was, didn't know how to undo it, and all I could see is her turning this thing on and getting caught in one of these big cowl-like scarves, and getting caught up in her neck. I said, I better go over there and help her out. So, well, we're going to be talking a lot more about the creative process today and some of the details of kind of how we get into that when we get back from a break here in just a minute. So, don't go anywhere. Come back here with us on In the Studio, and we'll be right back.
Supporting the local community. WGNW 95.7, The Choice.
Here's the latest news from your hometown radio station 95.7 The Choice. We have assumed the operation of the cafe here at 81 Patton Avenue. We have a new menu, new hours, and a new name. The cafe is officially called the Asheville Radio Cafe, the only restaurant, cafe, and music venue with its own radio station. Open every day at 11 a.m., closed on Sunday. Visit us at AshevilleRadioCafe.com. That's AshevilleRadioCafe.com. Did God tell you to move to Asheville, but you don't know why? Well, maybe we can help you with that answer. We have named our church after the book of Acts in the Bible. We call it the Acts Church. We as humans have overcomplicated this life here on earth and our understanding of God and the Bible. After all, there are only two things that God has told us to do. We are to love Him and to love each other. Come as you are and meet the love of a lifetime. His name is Jesus Christ. Visit us at actschurchasheville.com.
The world loves thrift stores, and we've just opened one. Acts 2 Thrift Store, sponsored by the Acts Church, is now located at Business Park South on Sweden Creek Road. We have everything from furniture to clothes, tools to toys. We're open Wednesday through Saturday, and we welcome your donation items as well. Just follow the signs to Act 2 Thrift Store.
Hi, and welcome back to In the Studio with Matt Tommy and Patty Ann Hale. We're here today live on 95.7 The Choice here in Asheville, but you can always listen to us online at 957thechoice.com and look at the archives there, or you can go to theworshipstudio.org under the Resources tab and look up all of our archives there. And we always post on Facebook as well. Got over 1,000 artists now that are on the Facebook group, a part of what God's doing with raising up an army of artists to reveal His glory in the earth. So we would love for you to be a part of that and just hang out with us. Wasn't that fun the other night? We just started our Unlocking the Heart of the Artist experience course.
Yeah.
Is this the second one we've done?
This is our second
yeah.
one.
I lose track. That last one was long. It was good, but it was like, woo, we got to shorten it up. But it was, this one is going to be 16 weeks, and
Yes.
it's just so incredible to see. I think we've got 32 or 3 artists now that are with us from all over the country and a couple of foreign countries too, I think, and just so neat. I look back and I tell people all the time, oh my gosh, if Facebook were not existing, I mean, God has really used Facebook
True.
for
I
us.
believe
It's
that.
been amazing to see.
I remember when I was starting to make connections on Facebook and just doing a little bit of what I was doing, 2-3 years ago. And my husband was like, "You're always on Facebook." I'm like, "This is my work.
Yeah.
This is my work. This is what I do, And so it has been really rewarding
Yeah.
in lots of different ways for me personally, ministry and just friendships and that kind of thing.
It is. So I'd encourage you, wherever you are today, listening or watching an archive, go to Facebook.com/The Worship Studio Inc. You can see our page there, or join the group and get involved in the conversation. It's really cool. You get on there, and regularly there are people like, "Hey, is there anybody in this area or anybody in that area?" Or it's just really neat to see all the encouragement and affirmation that goes on as well. So
yeah, we have a lot of people connecting in their local areas face to face, really, because of Facebook, meeting one another
right.
on Facebook, and our Unlocking course that we have as well. People form friendships online, but then they usually come to one of our events and see one another face to face. And so it really is a real world, I think. So.
Yeah, it's not a virtual world. It really is for real. So anyway, it's a cool thing. So go there. Well, hey, we're talking today about the creative process and about what it means to be an artist. Last week we talked a lot about the whole inspiration process, and my mind kind of went there even as we're talking about the actual physical creative process today, because for me, and I think it's probably the same for you, it's when you're moving into new areas especially, and for me, I make one-of-a-kind work, so it's like every piece is different. I kind of mix the inspiration and the doing of the work. I'm always doing that. Like I may get in the middle of a piece and just get stuck. And I don't know if you're the same way, but I have a library of magazines and books and articles and bookmarks and Pinterest and just all these, eye candy, I call it. There's just things that I can look to. And it's not that you're copying somebody else's work, because nothing's new under the sun, really, but you're looking for something that will spark, or like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that, or, oh, I see how they did that. And you can take those things and pull it into your work, and it's kind of like a springboard, if you will, that takes you to the next level. Because I think for most artists, it's very common to get stuck at the beginning, middle, end, whatever, in the process. And if you don't know how to push through that, it's real easy to just kind of get shut down and just say, well, this project didn't work out, or this piece didn't work out, I'll just sit it on the shelf. But that's not the way we want to be, right?
Well, I see it as it's like filling up your well, like your creative well, or feeding your creative spirit. It's like you have to continually be feeding it. I know just this morning I sat down and was looking at the Fiber Arts magazine that you were showing me, I guess just Saturday, and I noticed that yesterday, when I looked at it this morning, I'm like, that is the exact forms that I was sketching in my journal that I take to church with me. So I'm sitting there during the sermon just sketching, and I just fell in love with these almost circular but kind of morphed shapes that I was drawing, and just thought, oh wow, that's different than anything I've been doing, because I've been doing some just blocked shapes and that kind of thing, circles, but it was different, and I was like, wow, I really love that. And I even left it, like it was very simple, and I just left it so that I didn't change it, I didn't make it too complex. And then when I was looking through that Fiber Arts magazine again this morning, there was a Fiber Arts piece that had those exact shapes, and I didn't even realize that it was something that you were showing me the other day that was kind of in that well that came out in my journal, and it will probably come out in a painting or in a something that I do sculpturally. And so I think it's so important to continually be feeding yourself with eye candy, as you call it, just that, always be observant, and it's not just in books, but it's, it's leaves on the street, it's everything. And so to continually keep your artist eyes on.
That's right.
And reading too, just reading about other artists' creative processes, studying the masters, those things are so important to develop who you are as an artist and to develop your creative process.
It is, because I think it's very easy for us as creatives, it's easy to get stuck in our process. It's easy to get stuck in our head. And I remember for me, I've only been in Asheville, a little over 4 years now, and we, I've been making baskets and doing, fiber with my weaving and all that for over 20 years now. And it's really like my career, I feel like it's just begun in the last few years. And the reason is because it was at that time when I came to Asheville, and for me, I'm a basket maker, so I got to be a part of the National Basketry Organization, and just some other things, the Southern Highland Craft Guild here. And it wasn't until my eyes were opened to the other things that are out there in my genre that I started going, whoa, I didn't know, and I say this all the time, I didn't know it was possible.
Right.
I just didn't know it was possible. I was in my stall, if you will. And I think, I learned that whole concept from, Julia Cameron's book, which is such a standard for artists. The Artist's Way was a real inspiration when I was writing Unlocking the Heart of the Artist. But she talks about a concept in there about doing the artist date, of every week, multiple times a week if you can, I would say, but making...
Whenever you get a whim.
That's right. Just go with the wind. But whenever you can, get out of the studio, get out of the house, get out of the mundane, and go do something that feeds you, that, as you're saying, fills that creative well that's inside of you, because it's the more that we awaken that side of us, the more that we're able to be that sponge creatively and take in all of the stimulus that come. Then when we need it in the creative process, we're not dry. We're not pumping dry, if you will. Just I think about pumping that well. We were talking about that this week on Facebook about, sometimes you got to prime that pump, and it takes a long time.
Yeah.
Well, the more you fill the well, the more resource that's there, the more intimacy with the Lord, the more creative fodder that is there, the more things that you've been thinking about and journaling and sketching. Then when you actually get time to go in the studio, man, you're on.
Yeah.
You're ready to go. And that's what I hear so many times is people, they have limited time. Not everybody has the luxury like we do to be able to be, it doesn't seem like a luxury sometimes, but it's, it's paying the studio bills, doing all the things, the angst of it all. But it's, a lot of times people don't think about that whole process. Of what it takes to be ready to go into the studio. And most people that I talk to have limited time. They're working a job, they're a stay-at-home mom, they're a musician on the weekends or whatever, and they have very limited time. And so when they go into the studio, they go into that creative process, they don't have the luxury of being able to just think and be and do and all this sort of thing. And so I think that's why it's so important ongoing to just cultivate this life.
Yeah, it's the artistic life.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. The book that we're studying with our Monday night community at River Oaks is 1,000 Gifts, and it's about recognizing the gifts that God gives us in everyday life, even the mundane things, even the difficult things. And that book changed my life, a year ago, year and a half ago, even more so. I've always been very observant. I mean, I've always been kind of ADD with creative things. It's like, oh, pretty glitter, sparkle. But, and I always just enjoyed beautiful things, but that book helped me to internalize things more and to actually write down what I was seeing or make a note of it. And so just like had I written down what I saw in that Fiber Arts magazine, that I loved that, and I didn't even recognize that I paid so much attention to it. But if you start to, that's what it was. But if you start to recognize those things and make a mental note of it, or make a note on paper, or make a sketch of it, then it starts to develop your personality, your artistic personality. And so within the creative process, there's personality, there's process, there's the product. And so the development of the personality, of your own personality, is so important. And I keep thinking of that, that little song, "Be Careful Little Eyes, What You See."
Yeah.
It's really important to be careful, to be full of care about the things you see, not in a negative way, as we learned when we were kids in Sunday school, but to really care about the things that you're taking in visually, if you're a visual artist, or audibly, if you're a musical artist, or with even just movement, even like patterns and movement, if you're a dancer, to really see the basic elements of what you use in your creative genre, and to really, keep that creative spirit turned on all the time, so that you're just wide open, ready to receive. And so I just think that's so important in the personality, and that's how you develop a unique voice within the creative
process. Well, it's that
process.
process of cultivation. And as we're talking, I just felt the Lord say again that these are like seeds. The things that we see and the things that we choose to internalize are like seeds, and they do, but they will begin to produce fruit. The way God, we've talked about this before, but the way that God designed us is that our heart, our spirit, is an incubator. The things that we put inside of it, literally, God created it in order to incubate and grow things inside of us. And that happens creatively. That's not just a thing about, the universal laws of abundance or whatever. No, this is Bible. This is how, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. I believe that same thing happens creatively. That as we see things and as we sense things and we deposit those in our heart and we begin to meditate on those things, the Holy Spirit begins to bring those things into fruition. And it's by faith. It's by seeing those things that are not as though they were, in that process of bringing it in to reality by faith. We're able to co-labor with the Holy Spirit and bring these seeds into maturity, and then those seeds begin to yield a plant, which yields fruit, which then brings nourishment, which then brings transformation, and that's what art is all about. I mean, I think for both of us is this place that we want to release the kingdom, and so, you gotta always be planting seeds. A farmer just can't plant a seed one time and forget about it.
Right.
There's this constant. We're always planting, always harvesting, always cultivating. We're always in that process, and otherwise, you get to the end of your harvest year, and and next year you just expect things to come up, and they don't come up. Well, why not? Because you didn't plant.
Right. Yeah, and I see you doing that in your basketry all the time because, you show me a lot of things that are sparking your attention, and like this piece that you just did with the wide pieces of bark that's kind of like a bowl shape, and you've got that random weave. I remember looking at another basketry artist that just did the most beautiful random weave, and so you've incorporated that, and you may not even be thinking of that other artist when you're incorporating that, but I see you taking all those little pieces of things that you've learned, and you make a new creation that's totally yours. It's like bringing your unique fruit to the earth. For some reason, I just keep thinking about like the river of life, like we really are in this stream, this creative stream from the heart of the Father, from the throne of the Father. And it talks about in Revelation, the river of life went out, and the trees grew up on the banks, and there was different fruit every day, every month. And I think of that in relationship to our creative works. Like there's always something new He's wanting to bring, but we have to be connected to the water. We have to be connected to the tree, and And He gives us those gifts of doing that within the simplest things. So if you're working a mundane office job, well, look at the way the patterns of the pencils in your desk drawer or something, hook some paper clips together and make some beautiful pattern. Take, 30 seconds and be inspired by something. It's mindset. Yeah. It's mindset.
We hope you're being inspired today, and we got a lot more to go here on In the Studio, so don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back in just a moment.
WGNW 95.7, The Choice.
Where do you turn for Christian concerts and events?
Where can you get news from a Christian perspective and encouraging articles written by and about the local Christian community? Turn to the Journey Christian newspaper.
Available in print and online.
Visit www.journeychristiannews.com
or call 828-676-6535.
The Journey Christian newspaper.
Encouraging Christians on their walk with Christ.
Did you know that spikenard was prized in early Egypt and in the Middle East during the time of our Savior? The amount of spikenard that was poured on our Savior before His death would be worth almost $2,000 in today's currency, or a year's wages for a common laborer in that time. 95.7 The Choice would like to thank Jackie McLaughlin for her generous support. For more information about essential oils, visit oil-essentials.com or call Jackie at 828-452-2958. That's 828-452-2958.
Programming at 95.7 The Choice is made possible with the generous support of business partners like Area 22 Guitars. Area 22 Guitars is Western North Carolina's only boutique guitar shop. Whether it's an American-made all-tube hand-wired amp like Matchless, Divided by 13, Carr, or Fargen, or a U.S.-built custom luthier electric guitar brand like Anderson, PWE, Zion, Rowan, or Gatto, Area 22 Guitars specializes in the unique needs of the discerning musician. They carry a full line of boutique effect pedals like Keeley, Exotic, Rockbox, Menatone, and Wampler. And their acoustic guitars include Breedlove, Larrivee, Eastman, Bedell, and Crafter. Area 22 Guitars, not your average guitar shop. For more information, go to area22guitars.com or call them at 828-884-2222. That's 828-884-2222.
And you're back today with Matt, Tommy, and Patty Ann Hale here on In the Studio, live from Asheville on 95.7 The Choice. You can always listen to our archives there at 957thechoice.com or at our website, theworshipstudio.org. You can click on the resources tab and look on the little sub menu that says In the Studio, and watch all of our archives there. Also, I always want to encourage you to connect with us on Facebook. Lots of different artists from around the world that are there, loving the same things that we love, which is art and faith and engaging the Holy Spirit in our creative process. It's really cool to see all that God's doing, and that's what we're talking about today. Really, is on an individual level, talking about the whole process, the creative process of how we do what we do. Because a lot of times, I loved last week we were talking about the whole idea of the creative muse or the genius. How the Greeks used to think that the muse lived inside the walls of the studios and all that kind of thing, and then in the Renaissance it kind of shifted to all on us, and the focus kind of got off of the divine nature of it and kind of got more into a humanistic kind of exalting the artist, which I think many artists are still in, but we really believe that it's a collaboration, don't we? I mean, it's really that it is that. I love it when Bill Johnson talks about if God wanted less of you, He wouldn't created you. He said He wants all of you to be filled with all of Him.
Yeah.
And I love that, because that's, to me, that's the beauty of the creative process. I'm bringing everything that God's invested in me, mix that with the power of the Holy Spirit, and the whoosh gets to happen, and I get to have a great time at the same time. It's really a lot of fun. So
He's a fun daddy, isn't he?
He is, and I love that. Anytime you take fun and relationships out of the kingdom, it no longer is the kingdom. I mean, Jesus said that I came to give you life and life abundant. It's this abundant life, this fullness of creativity, of joy, of thankfulness, of expectancy that we are pregnant with as believers, and it's the thing that God has given us to release in the earth in this prophetic calling that we call the artist. And so I love this whole process. We've been talking about what it means to be in the process, and a lot about even being inspired in the process, because for me, and I think for you too, it's hard to get out, because we're always drawing, as we've been saying, from that creative well. And one of the things you and I love to do, separate and together, and just, as a fun thing, is go to galleries and look and see what other people are doing, and to kind of touch and feel, not touch too much at the gallery, come on. But
keep your hands 6 inches from the work.
That's right.
Do not touch the canvas.
But that really helps, because what it is about, there's a visceral connection, I think, for me when I go to a gallery and I can see other people's work. You can see the elevation of it too as well. It's not just, you're not just seeing it in the studio, you're really seeing it in a place of beauty and of prominence. There's something inspiring about that. Yeah.
And it is inspiring. It does. It gives you that eye candy that we were talking about. It really just sparks new ideas for you, but it also helps you to compare where you are and where you want to go. You may be totally just in the process, an emerging artist that's just figuring out what you want to do, and so therefore you don't need to compare. But if you're wanting to be a professional artist and you're wanting to specifically be in that gallery, you really need to check it out and see how your work fits with that. And I can remember when I was like I guess I was 15 or 16 years old, and there was a huge Highlands craft fair that was in Arts and Crafts Fair that was in Abingdon, which was at that time about 45 minutes. It's the novelty little town of the Appalachian region where I'm from. It's where all the arts was. And so they always did this big festival, and they had a youth division for the art competition. And, they would have an adult competition at the Art Depot, and it was a big thing. It was a big deal. I mean, all the local artists that were very successful, thought that was a big deal. And so I remember I was like 15 or 16, and I got into the youth exhibit. And, in my high school, I really try to say this humbly, like I was the artist in my high school, and I thought I was pretty good, and I really had a lot of pride at that time in thinking that. But I remember when I went to that regional youth competition, and I walked into the opening reception, and there was my painting hanging with all of the adult artists, because they had it all together, and all the youth section. And I remember seeing my painting, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, it was like my balloon had been deflated, because right beside of it was, you walk through the front of the gallery, and it was the best of the best in the whole region, and even North Carolina, Kentucky, the whole Appalachian region. And so there was my painting, and bless its heart. because it was just so not what I had in my
precious, wasn't
mind.
it?
It was
Just
precious.
precious.
But it was not what I had in my mind of the quality that I thought that it was when I put it there. But when I
Right.
saw it alongside the best,
It's
then I
kind of
was
like
like,
those American
oh.
Idol auditions. You know, I always say somebody's mama lied to them. You know, because folk go in there thinking
This
that
is me.
ooh, I can sing. You know, and then they get in there and it's bad. And let's talk a little bit about that, because we talk about a lot. I think in the kingdom, and especially as artists, about how we should not compare ourselves to one another, because it gets into this whole thing of envy and jealousy, and I'm not as good as you. But there is this really healthy place, like you're talking about,
Yeah.
of being able to, in a legitimate way, in a focused way, put my work, your work, up to somebody else's that is further along than you, and get out the measuring stick and say,
Yeah.
okay, where are the areas that I need to grow? Where are the areas that I need to come up a level? And where are the areas that I'm doing great? And we see that a lot, I think, with emerging artists. Well, I think we, in our Monday night groups, if you're leading a creative community in your area, one of the things that we love to do is on Monday nights, people just kind of bring random stuff that they're working on, and people will hold it up and say, what do you think? And me, just like everybody, sometimes they're like, that's awesome, or not so much, or I love this part of it, your color or your composition here, but not as much that. That is so important, because if we don't get that, see, that's why I think you can't grow as a creative person in a vacuum. Community is so important.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to live in that place of comparison, but at the same time, as we're growing as an artist, it's a good thing to be able to be real and be sober about where you are and also where you want to go.
Yeah, I know. We were looking for a movie to watch, because we usually watch family movies on Sunday evening, and Tamara, my daughter, was
Downton Abbey. Go ahead.
Tamara was just looking through all the previews, and we came across one that had a beautiful title, and I always look for great titles. Let's see the preview on that. And it was a cheesy, cheap Christian movie,
Right.
and it was like, oh my gosh. And then we watched another one that was like an angry Christian movie, and I'm like, oh, please, God, would you breathe your creativity into movie making,
Bless their heart, right.
And it was like, so I think, it was like they needed a good critique from Hollywood, probably.
Yeah.
And that may offend a lot of people, but it's true, because we can sit around as Christians and just pat each other's back and stroke one another's ego and just say, this is wonderful, and we never have any real vision of what it should be. So if you really want a good critique, go to someone who's doing the stuff, who's successful, whether they're a Christian or not, because, we talked before about personality, and we talked about process. The three things in a creative process is the personality, the process, and the product. And when you walk into a gallery that's a high-end gallery,
Right.
a gallery where people are buying art,
Sure.
and where people are collecting for various reasons, not just for social status, but because it speaks something beautiful, speaks something relevant, that works in there for a reason. And so if you can put your work alongside that and go, where am I missing it? What is it not? What is my work not doing that this work is doing? It can be very important to you. I know I walk in some of the galleries here in Asheville, and I've tried to really get around to some of them and see some different shows. And I can remember standing in Blue Spiral with Wayne and saying, this artist is getting something that I have no clue how to do.
Yeah.
How do they do that?
Yeah.
How is that achieved? And just standing
And it
there
pricks something in your
studying
heart
it.
that's good.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
drawing you to a deeper place. It's
Yeah.
not putting you. See, I think that's how you can tell that's the Lord. Is this drawing me in a good way to Him, to press in more to the process, or am I feeling shame?
Yeah.
Am I feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'll never be able to be? See, that's not the Lord.
Right.
And if you may be feeling that today, you may have gone down this road of comparison before and had those overwhelming kind of feelings. Don't let that is not the Lord. That is not what we're talking about. Shake that off. I mean, that's not God's best for you. The desire here is to try to pull you to that place where God's continually pulling you into the vortex, if you will, and getting deeper with Him. And as you go deeper with Him, the quality and the increase of what you're doing is like we said earlier, glory to glory.
Yeah, it's all about your mindset.
Yeah.
And if you find yourself continually feeling like you're not enough, then ask the Lord to transform your mind and start reading some scriptures that will encourage you.
Right?
You've got a book for them, because it is a spiritual, it's a spiritual issue, and it's a mindset issue. There's some lyrics by Florence and the Machine, of all people. She ministers to me, but
they don't play that on the country station, I don't think, do they?
No. She's too cool for country. I'm sorry if I've offended anybody. I like country too. I like all music except Jolene.
That's right.
I can't take the song Jolene.
Oh, I love Jolene. I'm begging of you, please don't take my man.
But let's get back to beautiful Florence.
Right, yeah, go ahead. Okay.
So Florence says in the lyrics, the lyrics in this song says it's hard to dance with the demon on your back, a devil on your back. It's hard to dance with the devil on your back.
Right.
So shake it out. And that's the lyrics, and it's like, really, if you find yourself in that place of comparison in a wrong way that makes you feel negative about yourself, in a way that makes you feel hopeless, it should make you feel challenged. But if you feel hopeless, it's a devil on your back, and it's hard to dance that way. So going back to the process,
Right.
I am so much a process painter, and I love to get people in the process, even if they're not an artist. I think if you can get in the creative process, you'll make your way to being an artist. And so there's something about that process that frees people up. And it's not so much about the product at that point. So when we're talking about, personality, process, and product, process is a really important stage.
It is, and I was just going to say, when you're in that process and it does get uncomfortable and the enemy's beating you up or you're just feeling in that weird place, I know for me, I just had to go back to what I know. And, I've been doing this in caustic work and working with color and things that I've just been, not used to doing over my, creative career. And it's been a real challenge for me. It's yielded some ugly ducklings and it's yielded some good things. It's just it's part of it. But there was a point where I had done like 4 or 5 of those things, and finally I got one I was kind of happy with. But I was just like, man, before I do another one of these, I got to go back and get my feet.
Yeah.
And so I just had to get my feet under me again and get that place of creative confidence. And so I went and I probably made 7 or 8 now pieces since then. And I'm like, I can still do it. My voice is still there. My fingers still know what they're doing. And that's a good thing. And now it's like the other night, Tanya and I were walking. We took Cameron to Ninja Night and at the karate studio. And she's like, what do you want to do? So we went out and ate dinner, and we ended up at AC Moore. And there I am buying oil paint, some more brushes, and some gold leaf. And
he will be painting before it's all over.
I know. The funny thing was, I went and bought some stuff for my hair. I went and bought some of this stuff that's like that old ladies put in their hair that make it shine more, and it's purple. And so I went and bought purple hair stuff, and then I went and bought gold leaf in the same night. I said, Lord, it's gonna be like a TBN show right here on the. I'm gonna have purple hair and gold leaf. Well, hey, we're quickly digressing here on In the Studio, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back for our last segment. Be back in a minute.
Your station, your voice, your choice. 95.7 WGNW.
95.7 The Choice would like to express our thanks to our business supporters like Ichiban School of Self-Defense. Ichiban Mixed Martial Arts provides a safe, family-oriented environment for people of all ages and skill levels to be able to train and prosper, both mentally and physically. Whether your interests are physical fitness, self-defense, competition, or just a healthy outlet for stress release, Ichiban Mixed Martial Arts will provide the tools to reach your goal. Their programs provide a well-rounded athletic approach to martial arts in a safe, fun, family environment. For more information, go to ichibanmma.com. That's ichibanmma.com, or call them at 828-423-0662. That's 828-423-0662.
Human trafficking is a growing problem right here in our own backyard. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, the average entry age into prostitution in the U.S. is just 13 years old. Each year, over 300,000 youth are sexually exploited. On Eagle's Wings Ministries is a local nonprofit helping these victims through outreach, shelter services, life skills, and job skills training, working with victims from age 12 through 25. On Eagle's Wings accepts no government funding and relies entirely on community support. To learn more about supporting this wonderful organization, visit them online at www.oewm.net. 95.7 The Choice would like to thank On Eagle's Wings Ministries for their continued support.
Hello, listeners. This is Aggie, the Italian Cookie Lady, and I am proud to support 95.7 The Choice. Whether it's a wedding, anniversary, or birthday, we have the perfect dessert for you. From cookies to cannolis, cakes, pastries, the Italian Cookie Lady is here to satisfy your sweet tooth. We use only the finest ingredients and family recipes. For more information, go to ItalianCookieLady.com or call me at 828-553-5295, and remember to mangia.
Today on In the Studio with Matt Tommy and Patty Ann Hale, here for our last segment. Having a good time today talking about the creative process. And you can always listen to us live online at 957thechoice.com or get our archives at theworshipstudio.org. Click on our resources tab and click on In the Studio there, and you'll be able to see our pretty faces right there and my purple hair that I was just talking about. No, it's not really
I
purple
can't
yet.
wait for that day.
You know, it's not.
I've been wanting to do a blue streak, so I'll do the blue streak and you do the purple flip, and we will be styling.
I put that stuff on my hair 3 times yesterday, and Tanya's like, "Do not put that anymore." She said, "You'll be like the old ladies at church. You know, you have the purple hair and all this guy." Not that there's anybody in my church with purple hair. I'm not saying nothing about that. But anyway, that was Patty that made me say that. I just, Lord forgive me, bless all the pygmies in New Guinea. So anyway.
Save.
That's right. Okay, can we start over again? I will now begin again. So, you know, I was thinking about this. My mama told me a joke this afternoon. I mean, the other day when I was talking to her, she was talking about funny things that kids say, and because I'm always famous for just saying stuff and thinking, like, why did I say that? And she said that when she was a little girl, she gotten in trouble or something and ended up running to the bathroom. She's like in 4th grade and ended up hiding up on the toilet in the stall, you know, and the principal came in there and asked her, said, "Cheryl, are you in here?" And my mother, being the polite Southern girl that she is, said, "No, ma'am, I'm not."
No, ma'am.
I said, "Well, Mom, you got to give it away." But, you know, anyway, I guess my family, we're famous for just saying anything. So, anyway, welcome
in a very polite way.
In a very polite way, that's right, and long Southern drawl. So, well, you know, we're talking today about the creative process and about, we're kind of down to the place where we want to explore a little bit about the whole product end of things, because when you are an artist, you know, it's funny, people tell me all the time, they're like, "I never meant to be an artist, or like a full-time artist selling my work, but then I had like 40 canvases in my garage and I didn't know what to do with it." So I had to start, you know, getting rid of things. And that's it happens that way for a lot of people. You know, you kind of end up at this place where you want to start selling your work, and you kind of come into it backwards. You don't always think, okay, I'm going to start out in this way. I'm sure some people do, but for me, I started selling baskets because I wanted to make more baskets. You know, that may be the same way with you with painting. But I think now on this end of it, you know, 20 years later, my sensibilities of the way I look at my work and the way I look at other people's work is from a much different perspective than it was when I first started out. And I remember when I first started out, and even, you know, many years into it, I would have the mentality of, "Oh, that's good enough," or "Somebody will buy that."
Somebody will buy that.
Yeah, that'll be okay. And now the mentality is so different that, like, for a basket maker, okay, you know, you've got the outside of the basket, which is what most people look at. But I look at now at the inside as much as I look at the outside, because I'm like, because I see people, they pick it up, they look at the bottom, they look down the middle of it. Well, I want that to represent myself as good as the outside does. And so I'm taking this meticulous sort of focus of my work nowadays, and that's the way I look at other people's work too. So, you know, I'm not a painter, but if I look at a painter's work and the sides of the canvas are not finished, or it's not hung for painting, or they've not signed it, or it's messy, you know, the back of the canvas is messy or something like that, then that really reflects, doesn't it? And it directly reflects how much you're going to be able to sell it for, and whether a gallery is going to want to put that and represent themselves as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've had past experience as being a gallery director in different venues, in university kind of educational aspects, but then also in retail. And that is so important. I mean, people would come in sometimes, especially young artists, and their work would be great. They'd be saying something really great, but there was so many of the details that weren't covered. And a lot of times, artists don't think about that because a lot of times they are not trained to think about that. They're not trained in the business of art. And so
remember we had the girls that came in our studio that had gone to art school. And said what? Nobody ever taught them how to
hang the wire on the back of the canvas.
And I'm like, hello.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to sit on the floor. I mean,
exactly. And so it's very important, the product, the finishing of the product. But the product itself is important. When you walk into a great gallery, like I said before, where art is there because people are buying it, they're collecting it for various reasons. They want to hang it in their spaces. They're moved by it. For whatever reason, they're buying that art or even displaying that art. It's at a certain level that's just beautiful. And I know we've all seen cop-out art and we've all seen trashy art. And, even in museums we see that sometimes. But there's something very special about art that's being displayed in areas like that or in museums. And, Pollock is Pollock because he's Pollock. He's in a museum because he's Pollock. Kandinsky is Kandinsky because he's Kandinsky. And what people love is the product. We love to hear about Kandinsky and study his life and know who he was and learn about his process and know his personality. And all of that's wrapped up in the product. Yeah. But the product is what you're standing in front of in the museum or in the gallery.
Ultimately, that's what somebody's going to decide. Am I going to pay for this or not? Am I going to invest in this?
Or even, am I going to let this impact me?
Right. Is this going to be a seed for me?
Right. If you're an artist that wants to speak more than sell, well, you want to speak well. You want to speak in a way that will impact people. And that's lots
a whole different show, see?
It is, because there's a lot of elements that cause that to happen or not happen.
Yeah.
I mean, composition, color, values, everything. And I'm just talking from a painter's perspective. Even like a musician, if you want your music to speak into the heart of someone, or if you want to be a great music artist that's getting all kinds of fame. Well, you got to know your field. You got to know what kind of expertise you want to accomplish and go for it. And so, not to ever discredit the process, though, because so many people are still in the process. They're in the place of learning who they are or learning what they want to do, and that should never be devalued, because wherever you are is right. But there's always,
and as a believer, wherever you are, God
ahead.
can use you in that, but it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't negate the fact that we're always pushing to that place of excellence. We're always pushing to that place, because, see, to me, that's really where then we get out of just the spiritual aspects of it, and we begin to our work begins to speak in a way where culture begins to take notice. It's not just because, see, a lot of people, and maybe this is a whole nother show too, we got a bunch of show ideas right here at the end, but it's like, a lot of people think, well, my work is great because God gave it to me, or my work is great because God's speaking through this. And it's like Ray Hughes always says, God gives us diamonds that are hidden in lumps of coal. God gave the diamond, but it's our job to crack the coal out and to clean that thing and to shape it and to bring it in to its excellence. And that's what we're all about at the Worship Studio, is helping you to be both filled and skilled. Have the passion, have the desire, have all the things that God has given you, but at the same time hone that thing into a thing of beauty that can be used in power. So.
Yeah, I think in the balance of like who we are at the Worship Studio, it's like we believe everybody is a diamond. I know that sounds cheesy, but everyone is a diamond. But your art may be still covered in some coal, and so we try to really find that balance.
I'd got emails about that.
I can say it very nicely. You see,
so sweet. She just. Otherwise, it'd been like, "Can you believe Matt said that?" It'd been all over Facebook this afternoon. So.
And then I would purposefully take the opposing side,
exactly.
so that we could banter about it. But it's all about the process and the product and the personality, and that you know, how you work that out in your creative process is your own unique journey, but it's all very important. You know, and what you were talking about earlier, you know, you were talking about your process and being very meticulous. Some people would call that perfectionism.
Right.
But you know, when you find your little niche that is your own, it could look like perfectionism to someone else, but it's just the way you do things, and you don't think of it as a perfectionist striving kind of thing. It's your sweet spot. And so, you know, Michelangelo, during the time of the Renaissance, you know, they were putting on these artists that they were genius. They were the genius. Yes, they were divinely inspired, but it was all about this human genius, the humanism that was there. And Michelangelo was like the first artist that ever had his biography written about him while he was still alive. And he had this pressure to be the genius. And he was competing to remain that genius artist. He was competing with Raphael and Leonardo. And so he, near the end of his career, he took all of his sketches and burned them, took them all out and burned them. And so we're left with the question, was it because he was a perfectionist and those weren't good enough and he didn't ever want anyone to see them? A crafter by the name of, actually he was a craftsman named Roger Coleman, and he wrote in this book, The Art of Work, and he wrote about Michelangelo, and he said that Michelangelo thought of those sketches as the place of the menial and the business side of art, the menial and the mundane,
the grunt work.
And the actual sculpting or the painting was the alive part. So we're left with that question with Michelangelo. Was it perfectionism that caused him to burn almost all of his sketches? Or was it just that he only wanted the masterpiece to be shown? You know, that the other part didn't really matter? Or was it that he was competing and didn't want people to see his process, so they couldn't follow it? There's all these questions that we have, and Michelangelo was very passionate, you know, always going after what God wanted him to do, really. He was always striving for that. So we can learn a lot from Michelangelo's creative process with the sketches we have left over.
That's right. That's right. Well, wherever you are today in your creative process, we hope that this has inspired you, that it's helped you to really go to the next level and push further wherever you are as the Holy Spirit would lead, and trust Him in that process, that no matter where you are, He who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it, to bring it to full completion, to full maturity, and you get to go along for the ride. It's going to be great. So, well, hey, we love you very much. See us on Facebook, see us on the website, and always listen to us here every Monday on In the Studio. Until then, we'll see you again. Bye-bye.